Hey everyone, and welcome to Big Red Homestead. I'm Josh, that's Caleb, and today we are breaking down, predicting Nebraska versus Northwestern, a pivotal game in the Big Ten West. A lot on the line for Nebraska, and Nebraska's looking to string together 2 straight Big Ten wins. Matt Rhule is looking for his first Big Ten home win, and we have a lot to talk about today. It is going to be a fun one. And before we get into it, before we even ask Caleb how it's going, we have a huge announcement. Today, we are launching the HOMESTEAD Store. We've been putting a lot of love into this. It's our new clothing brand that we're really pumped about. And essentially it's a brand for people looking to blaze their own trail, a brand for people who are hyped about Nebraska, about the Midwest. And obviously it's something we wanted and hope that you could wear to games and to parties, to casual events all around. So obviously the store is now open. So the link is in the description. So of course, after the video or even right now, wherever it is, hit the link in the description and go check it out. We got a lot of options, men's clothing, women's clothing, and everything in between. So it's definitely worthwhile checking out and something that we're just really, really excited about. And hopefully you guys will enjoy as well. So with that said, Caleb, how you doing?
Man, Josh, I'm doing great. Wearing my very comfortable, very high quality Homestead merch. I'm very excited. Yeah, just like Josh said, it's very exciting. Super comfortable. And we picked, we tested a bunch of different ones to make sure they were high quality, that they printed well.
Oh, I mean, they saw the sizzle reel.
Yeah, you looking fresh. And obviously, you can almost look as fresh as Josh and I if you get the Homestead merch.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But I mean, I'm
excited.
We have done some research, and statistically, this shows if you buy Homestead merch, the chances of Nebraska getting to a bowl game goes up by at least 50%.
100%. There is a direct correlation between how much merch sales and how many wins we have.
Just heard from the scientists just now. Yeah. So, okay, with that said, let's get into the Northwestern game. There's a lot to talk about. Man. Right now, the odds are interesting. I mean, I was surprised when I saw this. It opened up at about a 12.5 point spread for Nebraska. That's crazy. I was expecting more in like the 6 to 10 range, maybe. And so 12.5 is pretty significant. And right now, the point total, the over-under is at about 44. So it's expected to be a pretty low-scoring game, which, I mean, makes sense with these two teams. So let's start on the offensive side. We'll get into some of these strengths and weaknesses on both sides of the ball. So what are your thoughts on this offense, and what are we expecting to see in this type of game from them?
Yeah, I mean, Northwestern, they've had some QB injury already to start, but Ben Bryant will be the starter here. They also have a backup who is a dual threat guy, but Ben Bryant, the transfer,
from Cincinnati.
From Cincinnati, which was a good get for them. He's not been amazing, surprisingly. He's been graded 148th of 156 QBs in the FBS. I think a lot of it has to do with, again, he's under pressure a lot, and he's not great under pressure. So he's 120th. When pressured out of 151 QBs. But it kind of surprising too, because you've seen some nice throws if you go back and watch the tape, but he's only 127th in a clean pocket. Northwestern, again, on offense, it feels like they're just behind the 8 ball on 3rd and long so often, and they can convert sometimes. I mean, they have to, because they've had to figure out so many gadget plays because they are just continuously in 3rd and longs, which again, it's exciting for us as Nebraska because I mean, they haven't been very good. They haven't moved the ball well. But that being said, even with QB, there is some good weapons on Northwestern's offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was what you take away immediately when you start watching these guys. That they do have playmakers. I mean, immediately the first guy that jumps off the page is the running back, Cam Porter. And he was a guy that they were really excited about back when, like 2 years ago, when Evan Hull was there. They kind of had a two-head monster with Evan Hull and Cam Porter. And then last year, they were really excited about the potential for Cam Porter to break out, but it was really unfortunate after coming off of an injury. And so this year has kind of been, back to a little bit more of that breakout. He's a really physical runner, has great agility, uses his momentum really well. And he hits gaps with power, and he makes you pay for every single yard that he earns. I came away really impressed watching the film from him, even though the statistics haven't been incredible by any means. He's averaging about 4 yards per carry, I think with a long of only like 25. So he hasn't been extremely explosive, and the running game hasn't been that efficient for Northwestern. But regardless, I think you can see the talent there with Cam Porter.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think at his best, technically, I think his footwork is really good, and he has a really good motor as a running back. Like you said, super physical. And he can be a problem, even though he's not the burner speed. Again, he still can kind of rip off some chunk yards and again, be that bruiser that he kind of was with Evan Hull before. Yeah. That being said, they do have some speed on the running back, and that's Joseph Him II, their pass catching back threat. He has 8 catches for 129 yards and an 85-yard touchdown run or catch. And again, he's kind of that split back that, again, kind of the speed.
The third down speedster, 100%. Yeah. Like, he definitely looked good. You can see the speed immediately on the tape. Yeah, I mean, right now, Northwestern is 120th in yards per rush at 2.9 yards per rush as a team. So obviously, that takes into account sacks, and they've lost a lot of yardage on sacks because Ben Bryant isn't the most mobile of quarterbacks. But regardless, that's obviously a huge problem and very uncharacteristic of Northwestern to have a horrible running game. And that's kind of been the narrative this season for them, is that they've won essentially more based off of defense keeping them in games, and their offense just does enough. Never heard of that before. But you watch like the Minnesota game though, and you can see the explosiveness that they are at least capable of. And like even in the first half against Penn State, they moved the ball enough to be up in that game and put up points early, even though they ended up getting blown out. So, there is potential here. And if you give them opportunities, the offense can make plays, and they have enough playmakers. And like you said, some of the receivers are also real nice too.
Bryce Kurtz is the top of the list for that. He has 24 catches for 327 yards. An 80-yard touchdown as well. He has 3 touchdowns. That's the most for any of the wide receivers, and also the most yards and most catch, or actually just second in catches. But yeah, he's definitely the most impressive. There was a certain play in the Minnesota game that kind of broke the game open for them, where he just absolutely breaks some ankles of a cornerback, just kind of on a stop and go, and it was hilarious watching that a few times. So shout out the Patreon for if you want to see Josh and I react to some of those plays. Oh, hell. How did this corner get?
Oh my, he just faked a dig. Stop and go, essentially.
But yeah, so he looked good, and multiple times able to get open and being able to consistently get a step. He has average, depth of catch was 13.6 yards. So again, he is a solid wide receiver, and definitely I think their biggest weapon. He's really good on the slants as well, which we'll talk more about. He's good at winning his one-on-ones though. He's an impressive wide receiver. Cam Johnson
on the other side of the field as well, and he also looked good. So I mean, like, they realistically have the weapons that are like, they're middling to upper middling Big Ten weapons that can move the ball. So it just comes down to really how well Ben Bryant can play and how efficient he can be. He has just struggled, I would say, overall in downfield throwing, and essentially towards the sidelines downfield has been struggling for him. But like what you said, like they really, their strength as an offense is basically just RPO, quick slants, and moving the ball quickly around the hashes. And overall, they really haven't had too many like explosive big time plays, except for like getting really creative in some screen passes. And then, like we said, those slants. And then the other big plays have come from really effective route running from their wide receivers. So it's a mix of things for them, and they haven't found a consistent identity as an offense. But overall, like, they are still pretty dangerous. And probably the biggest flaw, though, is that their offensive line just has not been good.
They've been responsible for 55th most when Ben Bryant is playing for pressures. Yeah. And again, that's just not a great stat you want. And the QB has only been responsible for 3.6 of the pressures, which is the 7th best in the country. And when they have 22 sacks on the season, that, again, just a good sign that their offensive line is not great. So their right tackle is also a weak spot for them, in the same way that Nebraska's our left tackle, Turner Corcoran, is a problem for us. But he's 24th most responsible in the country.
Yeah, Turner barely got him beat.
Turner barely edges him out at 21st. So, again, when you were at comparable bad for that, I mean, again, exciting for Nebraska's rush defense. Again, they're averaging almost 4 sacks given up a game, and that's including teams, like Howard. So, and Howard was getting pressure, by the way. Yeah. It wasn't just these Big Ten teams. Like, Howard was able to get some pressure. Obviously, Penn State, as the game went on to chop, and those guys were able to get some pressure. So there is room
Yeah, I
there
mean,
is
in pass
room for our
blocking
defense.
overall, they were 61st in offensive line pass blocking efficiency. So they're kind of like middle of the pack to bottom of the pack, depending on the game. And we saw that. I mean, like certain games, they looked actually okay, but some they looked horrible. So it's just been a lot of inconsistencies for them. And
very similar.
Right.
To
And
us,
as an
where,
offense, like they really, I would say their identity was either running the ball through the tackles or really trying to use speed to get to the edge. They ran a handful of jet sweeps versus Minnesota, which was a really common theme in that game. And
yeah,
like we said, mostly just timing throws, RPOs, quick slants. And I think Joseph Hyman's an interesting X factor, and we'll talk about him later. But his ability to catch out of the backfield will definitely be something we have to watch for. So on the defensive side, what were your impressions of this defense? I think overall, it felt a little uninteresting, I would say.
Yeah, underwhelming, especially what Northwestern has been. Usually you can expect one linebacker. Like you just watch the tape in years past and one dude just jumps off the tape of like, oh, that's an NFL guy.
Well, I mean,
that guy's going to be a
had
problem.
Like one or two, first or second round draft picks on this team for the last 4 years, whether it was on the offensive line or D-line or at linebacker. So it is surprising to see a lack of explosiveness.
And that was definitely what kind of happened on the tape. Like Gallagher, who had been their 3-year starter, I mean, missing tackles, not kind of what we thought he would be as a guy who would kind of step up and be, that next NFL guy. They're just really average. The best stat is they're 58th in yards per play. They can keep stuff up in front of them. They are good on inside runs. They've been pretty effective in stopping, again, when it comes to power and also, stopping third and short. I'd say that's where they looked best as a team.
Maybe their best strength is just eliminating the huge plays downfield. They haven't given up too many of them. And most of the time they're just beat across the middle or beat towards the sidelines on like 15-yard out routes, things along those lines. So they haven't been beat too much over the top but they have been beat on the ground in big time plays. I mean, Howard had some huge plays in that game, and they were running the ball all over them in the second half. I think the running back for Howard, like Eden James, he ended up with 177 yards rushing in the game. He had a long of 64.
If you can beat the one linebacker that's supposed to fill the gap, you can get some huge runs off. I'm excited to see what like a Fleeks can do this game.
Eden James looking for another team.
Would you like exactly? Would you like a scholarship to the University of Nebraska? I feel that each way with one of those guys that we watch each year. But there's a clear opportunity for us in the rushing game. Again, if you can kind of beat them at their strength. Again, they trust so many of those guys. Like if you make one dude miss, I mean, there was opportunity, especially on that inside. And I think their zone, they're pretty effective in zone. And I think like a Penn State who wants to throw the ball and that doesn't have that great of an offensive line, they're 81st in opponent rush yards. And I expect us to want to run the ball heavy yet again, as that has been our offensive identity for this season. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us in here. Again, surprisingly average for a Northwestern team who, again, usually has someone that jumps off the tape for you as like, that dude's an NFL guy.
Yeah, I mean, their highest graded player right now is Rob Hurd II. He's a corner. And he definitely is, like I said, like when it comes to downfield coverage, he's been their guy. So it's just going to be an interesting game for Nebraska, I think. Like you said, they have a few guys who are all pretty good in the run stop. I mean, like Richard Hagarty is 42nd in run stop percentage out of over 1,000 qualified players on the defensive side. So they have a few guys who can go out there and make plays. But again, none of them are very consistent across the board. So when it comes to X factors, this is where it gets really interesting. So what are the first thoughts for you? Let's start on the offensive side for Nebraska. How do we find the advantage here on the offensive side?
I think this is a really important Billy Kemp game. A lot of the success from Howard and Penn State in this passing attempt was on these short passes,
in the slot.
Intermediate, middle of the field. Their linebackers, while could be solid at the run stop and physical, not great in coverage. And we saw that over and over again, speed being a problem for them. And again, some of these zones, again, they'll live with the underneath. They just don't want to give up the over top. So there's plenty of holes in these zones if you can find them. So I think that's where we're going to have a lot of success, that dinking and dunking, just taking what the defense is giving us. And then the thing is if you can hit them in stride, there was a lot of chances and opportunities for those big plays out of, those 5 to 8 yard passes that they're giving up. And so I'm excited to see what Billy Kemp can do. I think this is a really huge opportunity for him.
I mean, Minnesota, I think we can dial up a lot for Minnesota. And obviously, since we played them, I would assume the coaching staff's going to have a lot to say about how Minnesota played against Northwestern. I mean, Minnesota found a lot of success with Crooms out of the slot on deep posts, especially with play action or moving the pocket with Ethan Kaliak-Manis. So there's a lot of things that we actually like to do there that can play to our advantage. And obviously Billy Kemp's the only receiver we have left that has any experience whatsoever. So inevitably Billy Kemp's going to probably be an X factor moving forward. But in this game, especially with considering the weaknesses that Northwestern's shown against the slot and end zone coverage from their linebackers in the space, like, why wouldn't you dial it up in this game and take some chances here?
Yeah, 100%. And the same with Lloyd and the speed. Same thing, in those slot positions. And it's crazy. They actually bit really hard, like you said, on those play actions a lot of times. I think they're going to sell out run a lot. So I think there will actually be some opportunities in the pass game where there was some serious broken coverage from them on those play action passes. I think these corners, they're very willing to get into the run game, and we saw them cheat a lot towards towards the run game and toward that sideline.
Like, you wonder on like a 2nd and 1 or a 2nd and 2, do you just play action, take a shot downfield at some point in this game to try to expose them?
Yeah, I think there's some real opportunity there from what we saw on the tape, and I think Fedoni also has some chance on the seam. Tight end in the Big Ten is always
action.
That's the zone breaker all the time. That's always the answer. And again, with Fedoni probably being our most reliable option at this point, I mean, there's going to be more of that to come in this Northwestern game. But I think there's some real opportunities in the pass. Just maybe not on the deep stuff that you'd want, those explosive plays. The running game, especially in the second half, is going to open up, as we saw with Penn State and Howard.
Right. I mean, that'll be the debate for whether or not we actually can move the ball on the ground in the first half. I mean, more than likely, again, considering we saw quarterbacks have success on keepers, Harburg.
That's true too.
I mean, to be fair, when you're prepping for Nebraska, you're going to have to assume Harburg's going to hang on to the ball. But like Ethan Kaliak-Manis had a few moments in that game where he nearly housed them. And I think he did house one on a keeper because literally the whole defense bit 5 yards on the keeper to the right side of the field. So there could be opportunity here, and they don't seem to be the most disciplined defenses. And so if you can mix in some end arounds and really get tricky with how you move the pocket and utilize the feet of Heinrich Harburg, suddenly there's going to be some opportunities, and that's where I get pretty excited about this type of game. So on the defensive side, I think this is a pretty straightforward game. Our system matches up extremely well. Obviously, Ben Bryant has been horrible when blitzed, and that has been maybe the biggest narrative this season for them. Right now, he's 145th when blitzed out of 152 qualified quarterbacks in FBS, and 127th in a clean pocket. So obviously, it hasn't been pretty either way, but he's even worse when he's just blitzed, whether or not there's pressure. When he has that feeling like he has to get the ball out quick, he has not been effective. And good news is Tony White likes to dial it up.
And even with corner blitzes where you can kind of see it and then to throw where the cornerback's blitzing you, he did not multiple times.
Yeah, he missed it a few times.
Yeah, he did. He missed. And you're like, wow, most Big Ten quarterbacks, you're going to, unless you can really sneak one in there and really on some off call, that's not usually going to work. But he missed it on a lot of different blitzes. And so that's, exciting. I mean, Tony White, like you said, so many different packages that he's going to send for blitzing. And again, averaging 3 almost 4 sacks a game. That's huge for Nebraska. Again, as we've been able to, against bad teams with bad offensive lines, we have been able to get to the quarterback. So it's imperative that our defense does that this game.
I'm not convinced. I mean, the pass rush has been a little bit inconsistent, so I'm not going to bank on it by any means. But of course, Northwestern's O-line has been so suspect. There's, again, going to be opportunities there. Overall, again, like we said, Northwestern wants to get the ball into the flats, and they want to get the ball to their playmakers on the edge. And so, to me, really the biggest X factor here is just tackling in space. But the thing is that Northwestern doesn't do anything better than anything that Nebraska's seen this season from other teams. So that's where you have to feel pretty good. They're essentially the Minnesota offense with a less mobile quarterback and a less efficient pass or run blocking offensive line. So but then of course you can sit there and say, well, they beat Minnesota. Yes. But Minnesota gave them a lot of chances in that game too. So at the end of the day with Nebraska, the biggest X factor is holding on to the ball. And we've been doing a pretty good job of that with Heinrich at the helm. So if that's the case, I think that's where we can have some optimism. So with that said, let's get into predictions. Caleb, where are you at with this game? Nebraska, Northwestern, 12.5 point spread, 44 point over under. What are your thoughts?
I really like this game. I just feel like that we really do match up pretty well. On the points, I will take us slightly on the over. I actually think that Nebraska will have a lot of opportunities, and we'll see some highlight runs this game. I'm pretty confident in that. I think Harburg's going to have a solid time. The pass game is going to be difficult for us, but I'm not sure. We really haven't had to lean on it that much, and I think that they're going to be so worried about the run game, as they should be, because we've been very effective at it this season. Yeah. I think that there will be some passing opportunities. I expect, Fedoni or Kemp to get in the end zone for one of those passing touchdowns. But I do think that we're going to be effective on the ground. Again, it is, like you said, how well can we hold on to the football? Hopefully with the bye week for the extra time. Obviously, they understand that you can't do that, what we did against Illinois, and sneak out a lot of those wins, although our defense played great. That's why I'm pretty confident. So I'm going with Nebraska 35 here. Northwestern 10.
35.
I think we blow them out. 35-10. I think we blow them out. I think it's there's a lot leaning correctly here. They play into a lot of our strengths.
Husker Nation is going to be unbearable if we do that.
Yeah.
We're winning the natty.
I'm excited. So 35-10. Big win, Nebraska.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not as confident as you when it comes to the offensive performance. Right now, like you said, the red flags are there for the Illinois game with the turnovers. And then we had the near scares in the Northwestern and Louisiana Tech game where we recovered multiple fumbles, the strip sacks, and all of those things. So, there are some huge questions. Obviously, things can go wrong. The good news is
they're not good at turnover. They're not good at takeaways.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, agreed. For me, the opportunities on the offensive side will definitely come on play action to Thomas Fedoni over the top of the linebackers who just got sucked in by play action. Maybe you leak them out. You pull them in motion, then leak them out, and you make it an easy throw for Harburg towards the sidelines, things like that, where we're going to have a lot of success. And on the defensive side, overall, I think Northwestern's not going to have much going on. Inevitably, if I'm worried about one turnover or something like that gives them points early on, kind of like what we saw in the Penn State game, where they were right there with Penn State because of a turnover right at the beginning of the game. So that's my worry. But overall, I think we're a more balanced team. We match up very well, like you said. So I still feel fairly confident Nebraska's going to win the game, but I don't know if I'm willing to take the points on the 12.5. So I'm going to go Nebraska winning here, but it's going to be right on the edge. And I've been going between 23-13 or 24 to 14. I think I'm going to go 24-13 in a little bit of an underwhelming performance overall, considering, but at the end of the day, a win's a win in the Big Ten. With that said, obviously, again, check out the Homestead Store. The sale today, one time. Obviously, it's your time to get it. I mean, we appreciate you guys for supporting. This is something we really are really excited about in the long term, and we want to build something here together with you guys. So hopefully, you can join us on this mission to trailblaze a new path forward for not just for the brand or for the channel, but for Nebraska as well. I mean, this is a time for Rhule to trailblaze and homestead his way to a bowl game and beyond. So we appreciate you guys for watching. But as always, guys, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Big Red Homestead, and guys, we'll see you next time.
Go Big Red, baby.